Transformers Rise of the Beasts just hit theaters.
And people are just eating it up.
Yes, they're even asking for seconds.
But one of the opinions that is prevailing above all the others, I don't know why I said it like that, is that Rise of the Beast is the best Transformers movie so far.
That's a strong stance to take.
I think it's time that we break down Transformers Rise of the Beasts into its best parts and its worst parts, and calculate it up with our calculating minds and find out whether or not it is the best Transformers movie ever.
But before that, he's Mio.
And he's Keto.
Now let's begin. Starting off with the good things, one of them being action sequences.
Hey, that's pretty good.
I would say, off the bat, all the action sequences are good.
And there's a decent amount of them, so it keeps you entertained throughout the movie, and they all flow quite nicely.
Indeed. One of the very first one that sets kind of the tone for all the rest of them is the fight in front of the museum, which I would say is very good.
Yes, it kind of showcases the powerful Terracons and how powerful they are versus the Autobots, who are still powerful but aren't nearly up to the level that they need to be.
And it also involves the human characters a little bit as they're trying to not die, which is kind of a theme throughout the rest of the fights as well, and which I'd say are pretty well handled. The humans aren't like just getting in the way all the time. Some of their time they're just trying to survive, or they're trying to help out a little bit, and the integration is pretty good.
One of my favorite scenes was the highway or freeway fight scene, I don't know what you'd call it, but that was really cool. The way they used different maneuvers, like Battle Trap is swinging around and firing missiles at Arcee and Wheeljack. I thought it was pretty well handled and very, very nice, very cool, and very clean.
It was perfect. Perfect.
It's a nice environment too, because we have got some good daytime shots where everything's easy to see, which is one thing about the Bayverse movies. Sometimes things are a little bit hard to see. So
yeah, this was more like Bumblebee, the movie.
A minor spoiler here. We got a little caution sign up. There's a mech suit in this movie that's seen in trailer 2, so it's not like a big spoiler. But Noah wears a mech suit thing, and that is interesting.
It's a little goofy and a little weird, but it kind of works with the movie, so I'll give it a minor pass.
Moving on to another thing we enjoyed is the soundtrack.
The usage of the Bayverse music was iconic, but kind of confusing because it's a reboot. Like, I think they play Arrival to Earth at some point, and I was a little bit confused, but I think it matched up the tone, so I didn't really find it to be that big of a deal.
The rest of the soundtrack is acceptable, specifically the songs in it. I'm not a huge fan of excessive amounts of period-accurate music in movies. Namely, Bumblebee was a little bit heavy, Kong's Skull Island was a little bit heavy, but I think this one handles it fairly well.
Yeah, and the 90s rap matched up with a lot of scenes. Another good positive was some of the Autobots, namely Mirage.
Yes, Mirage is actually pretty good in this movie. I thought pretty easily get very annoying with that type of character, but overall, actually, I quite enjoyed his character. I find him one of the more likable ones.
Yeah, he had good writing and he was quite fun. Another good character was Bumblebee, and he was extremely cool. He just wasn't in the film nearly enough.
And we got a major spoiler coming up here, so go
plug your ears.
Plug your ears.
Skip forward. Bumblebee dies, and I think his death scene was decent.
Yeah, I would say so. It was handled fairly well. It doesn't necessarily like taint the rest of the movie per se with like its negativity. You know,
for most of the movie, actually, it's more of like, oh, can he be revived? So you do just get the idea that he's gonna come back at the very end. I mean, he does come back. It's a really, really, really cool sequence during the finale. Definitely worth watching.
For sure. We're talking like Thor arriving in Wakanda, or we're talking about Superman arriving in Justice League. Maybe not the best example.
But yeah, it was really cool.
Alright, spoilers over.
Another favorite character was Optimus Prime. He was pretty good in this movie. I think he had some good character development as well as good character. I just felt like he was a little bit dry in some cases. I wish he would do more, but overall I thought he was pretty cool.
Indeed, Optimus Prime is always cool. Optimus Prime and Bumblebee, always some of the faves.
Yeah, but those are like the three top ones. Another good thing in the movie was the pacing, except for the end.
Except for the end, the pacing was good.
Yeah, it had a nice adventure aspect that kind of kept you moving forward.
Yeah, we never stayed in one area for super long.
One of the only Maximal characters worth mentioning, by the way, is probably Airrazor. She was definitely a positive. She wasn't overbearing, and she definitely got the most screen time. But for some reason, she doesn't transform in the movie.
Disappointed!
I'm a little bit disappointed by that.
Minor spoiler.
If you're looking forward to an Airrazor robot mode, there is none.
Scourge was decently menacing, and he had a few good lines, and for the most part, he wasn't stupid.
Yes, it's always nice to see a competent villain. It's almost an extinct species these days.
And as far as sound design goes, it wasn't quite as overproduced as the Bayverse, at least to my ears personally, but it was still quite good. And that's about the end of the positivities. By the way, we would like to stress, the action sequences were really, really, really good, and definitely the best part of the movie, but we can only talk about them so long, which is why it might seem a little short. But onto the bad stuff. Wasted characters. As far as the Autobots go, some characters did not get nearly enough screen time, namely Arcee and Wheeljack.
They felt rather left out, and as though they didn't have any character development, which they really didn't. They're really more peripheral characters, which is a shame, because both of them are pretty interesting characters. I don't really like this interpretation of the character of Wheeljack. Specifically, his appearance is just a little bit off-putting.
And Arcee, I feel like, could have been a lot more, but she was really watered down and didn't really do anything of major significance.
I think it certainly would have helped to have her character character be like connected to another character. She's kind of connected to Wheeljack in a way, but they team up quite a bit, but they don't have like any character interactions that are notable. Like if she was an older sister to Mirage or something, or one of the other main characters, or if she was like an advisor to Optimus or something of that sort, then she would give something for her to bounce off of. But instead, she just kind of sits in the background.
As far as the Maximals, there's not enough time for any of them, actually. Especially, I am very annoyed to say, Cheetor and Rhinox.
I think Rhinox got like 1 line, and I believe Cheetor got 3. I wasn't really counting, but
even when they transform around the end, Cheetor, you don't really get to see Cheetor or Rhinox's face very well. It's like they were almost afraid to show them.
Yeah, I wonder if the models maybe weren't complete, or they knew they didn't look very good or something, but
it's really sad because I don't know if they're coming back for sequels. I assume that they will, but it would have been really nice to see them more.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed.
That of course goes for Airrazor and Optimus Primal, ones who got more screen time. Even they could use a bit more time to breathe and interact with the Autobot characters. The humans!
They were pretty boring as usual. I think that Sam Witwicky did a decent job of like carrying like 3 films. Like I think he was a decent enough protagonist. This protagonist isn't necessarily bad, he's just really, really dry.
In a lot of ways, it's actually more likable than Sam Witwicky and his group. This duo of human characters is a bit more interesting. You know, you can say they have motivations and everything, they're just not really engaging.
Plus also, this is like the 4th time that we've seen a human, meeting the Autobots for the first time, and it is getting a little bit old. Kind of like the reason they cut out Spider-Man's Uncle Ben origins, because we've always seen it multiple times. Now, one thing I think that was really missed on was they could have had better connections with the Autobots/Maximals.
Yeah, Noah has a connection to Mirage, so they're buddies and everything, and that's about it. I guess you could say Elena might have a small connection to Airrazor, but that's barely there.
Noah is kind of compared to Optimus in the way that like, they have similar values, but I wish they could have brought that a little more into the movie as opposed to just in like really small, tiny segments.
And connecting them to the other Autobot and Maximal characters could help too, in the way that Elena, since she has a father that she mentioned before, but we don't really see that go anywhere, that maybe Optimus Primal reminds her of her dad a little bit, maybe they can have a bit of a back and forth, maybe she reminds him of somebody else and they have a character connection, anything to just brighten things up a little bit.
And one thing that I think was really missed opportunity was Optimus Prime's speech. Well, I guess, spoiler, Optimus Prime survives. Optimus Prime's speech at the end, I think, was fine, but before this point, Noah didn't have any like voiceover stuff going on, so at the very end is kind of jarring, and it didn't like follow the same pattern as Prime's speech, whereas I think it probably should have to make it tie together a little better. It's kind of a missed opportunity in my opinion.
Moving on to our bad guys, the Terrorcon. Again, just kind of like the Autobots and the Maximals, they don't get a whole lot of screen time, and that's unfortunate. But Scourge is a rather interesting antagonist in the way that he's pretty, he's a little bit scary, he's a little bit menacing and everything, but we don't really lean into any of his motivations. We don't learn his backstory, because Unicron mentions that he's the last survivor of his race. Beyond that, we don't really learn anything about him.
Could have been a lot better, I think. As far as visual effects, CGI sometimes was really bad. For the most part, it was fairly solid, but for some segments, especially in the finale, things were really, really janky.
I can see that happens a lot when you have these big sequences and everything, because when Michael Bay did his, he made sure to have a whole lot of real-life structures and things in place to CGI over, but in this, it seems like it was mostly a completely computer-generated battle.
Noah putting on the spoiler suit was really weird, and it took away from the moment because the green screen was just so bad.
It wasn't so great.
And sometimes when Prime's just walking, he just looked a little janky in some parts. Even when he like Prime picks up Noah and everything, things just look really not good.
Speaking of the final battle though, there's a lot of repetition in this movie, and it starts to feel a little bit old at times.
Yeah, especially the finale.
Spoiler alert
for the finale. The finale is rather repetitive because it has 2 large CGI armies just popping out of nowhere. One pops up and like, okay, here's the army. Then all of a sudden another one pops up and there's more of the army. It just feels really weird and you're like, okay, I guess that just happened. And there's also a scene when Noah goes back to save Optimus, who's being sucked up into Unicron. He's like, oh, till all are one. But then all of a sudden he's like, oh no, I'm losing my grip, and they almost both fly away or whatever, or like Prime flies away. But also Optimus Primal comes back in and says, till all are one. It just feels really weird and it doesn't make a good moment.
And we see Scourge fire off his little mini Terrorizer thingies to chase Noah and Elena. He does that 3 times.
There are some plot holes and plot conveniences. I feel like this is one of the movies where like there's a bunch of them, and to mention all of them in this video would take quite a bit of time. But a couple of questions were like, time travel. Are the Maximals time traveling or no? Because I feel like they have to make things make sense.
But that doesn't explain how Scourge is there, and they don't also explain why Scourge needs the key to bring Unicron, because it's Unicron from the future?
Okay, so time travel is really weird.
And just to show kind of a contrived part, there's a random tunnel that they need to get through at the very end of the movie, and it just happens to be human sized. So.
Even though I'm pretty sure that Arcee could have gotten their, motorcycle form to at least like help the human characters, but it is really weird. In conclusion, it really depends on what you like whether this is going to be the best Transformers movie.
Bayverse fans may be a little bit disappointed because this film is definitely more modern in its sensibilities and it's not quite as unique and stylized as the Bayverse films.
And Bumblebee fans might not like it either, as it's not as down to earth, and it's definitely a little bit more dumb and not as good of human sections. But if you dislike Transformers, I think you will probably like it, and either way, whether you go swing one way or the other, I think it'll probably be an easy top 3.
And if you don't like any Transformers movies at all, you probably won't like this one.
But for us, it's a good Transformers movie. Maybe not as good as Bumblebee, 'cause I think Bumblebee is a good movie on its own, but we like it more than 2007.
Hey, you say we?
Okay, I like it more than 2007.
I'm on the fence about that. I think right now, because I've seen them both recently, if I had to pick one to watch again right now, it would be Rise of the Beasts.
That's just our opinions. Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.
And if you want to see another Rise of the Beasts video, go ahead and click over here, as we're going to be creating probably a couple of these, so enjoy.
If there's not a video right over there, then it'll be something else interesting. But we'll see you over there. Until then, he's Mio.
And he is Keto.
And we hope you have a blessed day.
Bye.